Right, so next up for today, I think this is something really important, and we will continue to discuss this at the innovation stage, where data is our capital, where knowledge is our capital, and where we have a shortage of skilled staff. Whenever staff leave the company and their knowledge goes with them, then this always has a certain danger to it. And this is why we have been able to get a speaker to come here to us, and we'll talk about knowledge retention strategies against the mind monopoly. I'm really looking forward to what he's going to tell us, and I think this is a really very important topic for the present day and age. I'm looking forward to welcoming Christoph Kluge, Managing Partner of Tepcon GmbH from Doana Esching on stage. So you can ask your questions via Slido, and Christopher will be glad to answer them later on. Yes, thank you very much. Welcome. I'm Christoph Kluge. I'm a managing partner of the Tepcon GmbH, and I'm very glad to be here today and talk about strategies against the mind monopoly today. So what's the mind monopoly? The mind monopoly is the know-how that's inside the minds of the skilled staff that they have been able to compile over the last 20, 30 years, so that they know where they have to go, if they have to do their maintenance, if they have to replace parts, if they have to do the assembly. So they just know how to do what, and they can do this independently. The problem being that as long as this know-how and this knowledge is in the mind, nobody else can access it. And when there is an extreme shortage of skilled staff, it makes it very difficult. Whenever the staff leave and go to the competitor, they will take with them their knowledge, and nothing is left in the company that they originated from. So it's really important that you have a certain degree of knowledge retention. You have to ensure that the knowledge that's in the minds of skilled staff is digitized in some way, and that it's made available in such a way that other staff can benefit, so that the work can be done independently by other staff with the same degree of quality as the skilled staff would have been able to do. So on the one hand, you have knowledge retention, on the other hand, you have process reliability, not only meaning that the individual member of staff knows what to do, but process reliability means that at every location all over the world, no matter what the mother language is, he or she can do an activity independently on the basis of an instruction, and that at the end of the day, the same process is the result without any errors. And if you have this kind of instruction, then one effect is that these members of staff can get faster and faster. They no longer have to think long and hard about how to solve something, but they know how to do this really quickly. The fact that instruction works as something that IKEA, for instance, has demonstrated, or Lego, so the very big companies, children build complex models with over thousands of parts. It's not the parents showing them how to do this, but the children do this by themselves, and they show the results, and the result looks exactly what looks like what's printed on the page. So with a visual instruction, a member of the staff can implement an activity like this independently, although they probably would be able to do it without instruction. You can build a whole kitchen without being a joiner if you have the visual instruction. And if you think about this for a moment, then you realize at some stage that the shortage of skilled staff in industry could be solved rather quickly with these types of instructions, because then this knowledge would be transferred, and this know-how and knowledge can be distributed to everyone else. So instructions are not new. We have many things that are stored in PowerPoints, in Word documents, and so on and so forth. The problem is these tools weren't created for this kind of thing. Nobody invented Word to write an instruction. It's just a tool to write a letter or something like that. So because it hasn't been optimized, it's very cumbersome to write an instruction in Word. On the right-hand side, no, on the left-hand side, you see an example of what this kind of instruction could look like, and I saw it for the first time and asked the company, well, how long does it take? It doesn't take long, and I asked the designer, and the designer colored these parts, and it didn't take longer than 15 minutes, but just for one slide. So if you have an instruction consisting of 100 working steps, 100 slides, then you have to extrapolate how long this would take. It's very, very cumbersome. This is why PowerPoint wouldn't work. And you don't have a controlled format, because in PowerPoint and Word, of course, you can document things, but you need animations, you need markers, and at the end of the day you have a colorful instruction, and the skilled staff has to think about what the author really wants to tell him with this kind of format. And even if the instruction were good, then you have this sort of scattered filing, so you have one member of staff who files it properly, who has a file, then the next member of staff will put it in the product file or in the document management, and the one who needs the instruction will be hard-pushed to get the right instruction in the right version, in the right language, when he or she needs it. So we looked at the situation and thought of how to improve this. We said, well, if we want to do it simple and compile these instructions simply, so that in the course of minutes at a workstation, the member of staff can follow these instructions quickly, then this would make it possible for this member of staff also to write his or her own instructions. So it needs to be simple. An instruction needs to be available with one click. It's not that you should look for it for a long time, spend lots of time and effort, but scanning a cue card, get a list of instructions, then select a particular instruction, and then you can go. And you need a clear content, so you don't need to sort of think yourself into this instruction. It needs to be structured in the same way. You need to be able to find your way around immediately. And it's always got to follow the same format. And then PowerPoint is not a digital format, so if you want feedback from the members of staff, then they need some kind of form telling them or asking them whether they understood the instruction, that they can check some box for quality assurance or prepare work in this way, and we thought that we would work paperlessly and digitally in the existing landscape. So it's not an isolated solution, but an integrated solution. I spent a lot of time describing how this looks. I brought a short video along just to show you how fast and how simply these instructions can be made. So the member of staff has taken a picture, then selects a symbol describing the steps, fastening some bolts, then with a double click he or she can go into this image, then click onto individual symbols, and then will dictate into the smartphone what needs to be done, bolting on a metal plate, then the tool can be selected, everything can be administered, which tools, which markers, and there's a certain sequence that's also given. And you saw that in the course of seconds, such a working step was documented, and the knowledge is retained in the company. There's no faster way of doing this, and no simpler way of doing this, really. This can be supplemented by individual little videos, no YouTube videos where you have to go back and forth and do all sorts of things, but explaining complex things simply. Then you can use PDF files if you have require technical documentation with the target of making the member of staff as independent as possible, so that he or she doesn't need to call anyone to know what they need to do. And we also have 3D instructions included, so that you can explain these working steps in 3D, that the staff can look at what to do in 3D. This is even simpler. Can be combined in different layouts. And up until now, we described everything visually. And now comes the point where the staff no longer want to write anything. Okay, well, it's difficult to compile your own text. It's difficult sometimes to find the right beginning. And we thought, oh, that doesn't really matter. We've got the large language model, so the information that has been captured can be used with AI and the markers and the working step, what it's called. I can tell you what the instruction is called, and then say, we'll generate the right instruction for this. And what's intriguing is that you get the right instruction. The staff is led and guided through this sequence. It says, well, you've got small little screws that you need to look at so as to not lose them. And if somebody had to write this themselves, they probably wouldn't have thought about this. There are also certain pointers as to what to look out for, and so on and so forth, all included in this instruction that's written with the help of AI. So we have reusable work steps, for instance, preparing work, safety at work, and in PowerPoint and Word, for every individual PowerPoint or Word, you'd have to have 3 slides in the beginning, and you'd have 300 copies at some stage where you document the same thing 300 times around. We use building blocks for this. These building blocks are linked to the instruction, and this provides you with the opportunity of ensuring that with one click, 1,000 of instructions or how many you have are updated at the same time. And you can do the same thing with the variants. And this brings us to the variants where you have different product variations, and for every variant you have one instruction, or you have one instruction describing all the variants, which is sometimes a bit of a problem for the staff because they always need to check whether they're on the right page and have got the wrong instruction. So our solution is our instructions consist of several steps, and the individual steps can be assigned to the variation. So we've got a table here, and the staff will enter a new variation, look at the list and look at the checkbox, and this is one working step per checkbox, so that the system will know which particular instruction is needed. The advantage being you have one instruction for X variant, so whenever something is updated, you can always be sure that all your documentation, all your instructions are updated. And as I mentioned before, up until now, we managed to guide the member of staff safely through the process, but we haven't had a feedback yet to know whether he or she found this conclusive enough and what kind of end product was the result, which is why we developed an additional functionality to compile forms and checklists. This is an example. They're just as easy to compile as the instructions. So on the right-hand side, the controls are selected, the check boxes, then you dictate your content, whatever is required, and just as quickly as a working step can be compiled, these forms can be filled in, and these forms, these logs can be answered straight away, which provides you with the opportunity to document the whole life cycle of a product, looking at activity logs for people who were on a service operation, for instance, and involve the staff in getting feedback from staff. So if you have this type of feedback, it can be fed back into the system straight away, always with the possibility of exporting these files, integrating it to a PLM or SRP system. And there's one more essential point, translations. So you're probably also familiar with Word or Office documents. Whenever you need a translation, you have a copy of the document and do a certain labeling of this particular file. Every language gets its own document. The problem is, at some stage, you'll probably have 10 different documents, which is highly complex with the different building blocks because you have so many of them. and this is no longer manageable. So at this point, we thought, well, we want to do the translation of the instruction automatically, the description of the instruction, and so on and so forth, doing automatic translation into up to 133 languages automatically. So you go into this system. On the right-hand side, you see everything that's framed in red has not been translated. You can select a new language, then click on the new term. It's then translated to French in this particular case. You can post, edit, and look at technical vocab. This brings you implementation. Everything has been translated already. And then down here you see the working steps, and the manual steps have been translated, and then you have a complete translation into whatever target language of the up to 133 languages in our system. We tried it out with one of our subsidiaries, with a Ukrainian member of staff, or several members of staff who were not able to speak English very well. So we generated Ukrainian, and optically this looked right. We couldn't read anything, so we thought, well, how can we test whether this works? So the material, the tool, and the instruction was given to these Ukrainian staff, and we said, we'll come back in an hour and see what the result was. And hey presto, we had exactly the right result. So these new staff were able to implement these working steps. This was the Lego or IKEA effect. With the right instruction, everybody is able to produce exactly the same result without any errors, and you have this process reliability that you need to rely on. It was so simple to set up these instructions that staff started compiling their own instructions without having been asked, and this used to be different in the past. So the members of staff started with test 1, test 2, test 3, and we found very quickly, oh dear, now we don't have any qualitative instruction. If you have problems with a machine in the field, then you run into problems, and this, of course, is an enormous stress factor. So we have a release process so that these plants are always compiled. They need to be released whenever they are made available, and we have a control over this so that we know exactly what member of staff compiled what. You see these orange exclamation marks, for instance, and the text on the right-hand side. You see that whenever there were amendments, whenever things were added, this has been captured in the program. This is a good thing for the member of staff doing this, and also for the member of staff following this instruction, because you won't have to look for the difference. The right instructions need to be found easily, so you can tag instructions, you can add text. But what's even better is that you can have a QR code, a machine-readable code, and we consciously don't use our own codes. We could generate them. I can show you that later. But we use the ones that the machine has anyway. We can use them, link them with the plant so that the next member of staff can scan the code and then will be led onto the right instruction for this machine for the maintenance. This is not done only offline but also online, so you know exactly who did what at which point in time, and you can have a qualification matrix set up on the basis of this. You can also filter this according to teams, to members of staff, in order to find out very quickly who needs what instruction for what operation. This is also available offline. So it's a complete web application, so you only need a browser, you don't need any installation, it's a software as a service model. The only thing that you need is Chrome and Edge, and you are available offline. So if a member of staff goes to the cellar, for instance, where he or she has no Wi-Fi, then you can have the instruction provided offline, including the forms and everything else, so that the member of staff can do his or her activity, do the log, and as soon as they are online once again, it is transferred to the online system. We have a Word and PDF export facility, which is important for exporting into Word or PDF format, for instance, and we can do this in the corporate design of the different companies, so that you know there's a difference of how these instructions look. Now, we've led the member of staff through the normal sequence. Sometimes when there are issues and problems, we said, well, we can also use a ticketing system so that the members of staff can also be guided through the process if something goes wrong, and that there isn't any chaos, but that the staff will know exactly what to do in such a situation. So what did we do with these digital instructions? On the one hand, we have a 10 times faster creation process for the instructions, so that the know-how which is in the minds of the staff is retained, so that these staff can leave the company or get ill or whatever, and the knowledge is retained. We have 75% plus increase in productivity. We sometimes had a 3 times faster, 4 times faster, 5 times faster implementation of the process, because when it comes to solving problems, the member of staff no longer has to think of how to do it, but will be led through this. We have 90% less errors. Once the member of staff has been told, do step 1, 2, 3, and 4, use this and that tool, then it's not really possible for any errors to occur. And we have this continuous improvement process for the plant, which also reduces error if they do occur. And you have another opportunity, which is faster training times. We have 3 times faster training times. The supervisor no longer has to stand next to you, guiding you through the individual working steps and explaining manually what they need to do, but the staff will know exactly what to do, and the supervisor can check on the basis of the logs what they did and whether this was correct. So looking at these features, the last question is, do you want to continue with some office instructions, or would you like to use digital instructions in the future to retain your know-how and get this type of success? That brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, then fire away.
Erstmal einen großen Applaus, meine Damen und Herren, auf jeden Fall. Mega spannendes Thema.
A round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, a really interesting subject. I'm in the middle of this process at the moment, so we've got, I have questions, and there is a question from the audience, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Can this solution be used with external partners? What about the user management for external partners? But as far as I understand, you sell this solution. Yes, answer, we cooperate with partners. So we've got resellers using this system, and the machine tool builders use this for their customers and provide this service to others, and they actually have enormous success with this because the travel expenses can be saved. The customers has fewer downtimes because this information goes to the customer, and the customer can help him or herself. yourself. And you also get the feedback as to which customer used which instruction, so you have a further information channel that was set up to the customer. Right. What I think is really exciting, I mean, we use AI to generate these instructions. I remember my first assignment about 100 years ago was compiling technical documentation. I remember that was very cumbersome. And what you mentioned in the presentation, how the information is done correctly. I would be interested to know, how does the data come into the system? Because imagine there's a new machine and I use your solutions. I want to write a new instruction or working instructions for the shop floor. How do I get the data into the system, and how can I ensure that the artificial intelligence understood this correctly? Because I've done some experimenting myself. I only use ChatGPT, of course, not your solution, but sometimes things went rather wrong. So, well, it doesn't really matter that much if things go wrong. The problem is that the member of staff will be hard pushed to put things into words, but where the member of staff is very good at is finding out what's wrong. So if you give a member of staff a piece of text, then the member of staff will correct it. Of course, he or she will have the ability, and they should, read through this artificially intelligence-produced text. This makes things 5 times faster. If you compile a text, if you provide this to the members of staff and they read through it and check it, then they will find out the errors, they will check it, and the information comes from the images, so the members of staff will take pictures of their working steps, introduce the markers, add which tools they use, and in 99% of the cases, this is enough for a sensible instruction. And for every step that was captured, with every instruction that was captured, the knowledge base is bigger, so that the basis that I use for my processes gets better more and more. It's self-optimizing. Okay, there are 2 further questions. Okay, that's the first topic that goes in the direction of artificial intelligence. I'd also be interested to know, when you talk to customers, how worried are people to use this type of solution? Because having a working instruction in the processes, okay, that's one thing, but instructions can also include knowledge that provides secrets of the company. And how worried are people? Answer, well, people are rather worried, because the instruction allows people to do something independently that they weren't able to do beforehand. So they know what tool, what material to use, which sequence. So, of course, customers are very concerned, and we need to ensure that the system is absolutely safe and secure. We have a penetration test once a year. We provide customers with a solution of doing it on-premise, and you can use a co-pilot which ensures that only the company data are used, so that the members of staff have the control over what is released, what is kept in the company, where trust is there to save data in the data center. Of course, a data center has 10,000 of servers that know what to do. They will probably know better how to secure this data than everybody else. We spend a lot of money, actually, to secure data. Another question. Well, when it comes to onboarding new members of staff, for instance, say a new member of staff turned up, and the system will probably optimize onboarding too. And the second question is, say I was a new member of staff in production and said, oh, there's something that you could do better when using your system, the continuous improvement process that you mentioned. Yes, as I said, it's a continuous improvement process. You saw the tickets that I showed you. In every working step, you can compile such a ticket. You can define it yourself. So you've got this continuous information process ticket, then the member of staff can take a screenshot and say, I didn't understand this or that and the other, and the information of the ticket will go to the author, who will provide feedback. The author is actually grateful for providing feedback because he or she will want to know how to optimize the instruction. The better an instruction is, the easier the workflow goes. So the member of staff will probably take the phone and call up the colleague and say, how does this work? And this is something that you want to avoid. You want to ensure that people can concentrate on this instruction, digital instructions. One last critical question. If you think of shop floor management systems, for instance, where members of staff learn to involve their own know-how in order to bring about optimization. Imagine we were using more and more artificial intelligence to address these topics. Would that not lead to a situation where we rob the member of staff of their knowledge because they can say, well, you can ask our AI, they know how to do it best? No, because the basis of AI is the know-how of your members of staff. Yes, but imagine, the people who have been around for a long time, and there are a few young, innovative people, and you think, well, at some stage they realize, whenever I have a new idea, I find this in artificial intelligence already. Well, to just stress this again, if you have a 20-year-old member of staff, then this is a unique selling point in the company if he or she knows something that the other one doesn't, and he will know different things than another member of staff. So the question is, why should I give my know-how to the company? Then there won't be any distinguishing features anymore. But if the member of staff was given a platform and I told him, well, look here, this system includes the knowledge, the info where this knowledge comes from, and you have a dashboard and you say these members of staff have involved most of the knowledge or know-how we have, then this is an enormous motivation for the people who've been around in the company for a long time, and this is still a unique selling point as opposed to the rookies, so that every member of staff can leave a footprint in the company, and handing on knowledge is actually a good thing and will be rewarded. Okay, we've used up our time. Thank you very much, Christoph Kluge. Thank you very much for this excellent presentation.